Welcome to a breakout session produced by our underwriter Barclays, New Approaches to Bridging the Racial Wealth Gap. Eamon Anderson, Acumen America Director. Susana Cabrera, Everytable Store Manager and University Participant. Bryce Fluellen, Executive Director of Social Equity, Everytable. And C.S. Venkatakrishnan, Co-President of Barclays Bank, PLC.
Hello, my name is C.S. Venkatakrishnan, known as Venkat. I'm a member of Barclays Bank PLC's Executive Committee. Barclays is a global bank headquartered in the United Kingdom, but we operate in countries around the world, particularly here in the United States. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 2021 Atlantic Festival. The Atlantic is a premier American institution and has been so for over a century. I personally have been a subscriber to the Atlantic and a reader for over 3 decades. It is one of those magazines that shaped my life, so I'm personally very happy to be here. Barclays is a bank that, as I said, operates across the world. And we are particularly devoted to helping the communities in which we operate continue to grow and thrive. At the festival today, we are going to talk about Acumen America and Everytable. Acumen America, of which Barclays is happy to be a founding partner, is a very important non-profit organization dedicated towards investing in social entrepreneurs to tackle poverty. Working with Acumen, we have invested in a portfolio of about 30 companies, and Everytable is one of those companies. Everytable is a mission-driven food company that aims to provide high-quality, nutritious meals to everybody and in an affordable manner. Therefore, it is fighting for food justice and food equality. Everytable operates under a unique franchising model called a social equity franchising model. And what this basically does is allows a franchisee to start a company with zero upfront investment on their own part. But they bring their love, their sweat, their dedication, their tears, their faith in their community to develop their franchise. To me, this is a perfect example of what we bring as a bank to society. We use our capital, we use the talents of our people, and we help entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs like those at Everytable, working with Acumen America. They provide their ideas, they provide their focus, they provide their energy, and they know what works best in their community. So I hope you enjoy this session. Thank you again and welcome to this festival.
Thank you, Venkat, and thank you, Barclays, for your partnership and for hosting this panel. And welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you join us today to discuss new approaches to bridging the racial wealth gap. My name is Eamon Anderson with Acumen America. As Venkat mentioned, Acumen America invests in game-changing entrepreneurs who are tackling problems of poverty across the US. Over the last 6 years, we've invested in 30 of these entrepreneurs who now reach tens of millions of low-income Americans. These companies aren't just reaching impact at scale, they're changing systems. And we're so lucky to have one of those companies with us today. Everytable is on a mission to make sure that healthy, delicious food is available to everyone, everywhere. They're working toward food justice as a way to improve health, but also see their restaurant business as a way to build wealth in the communities they serve. Today, we have 2 of the amazing people who make that work possible. Bryce Fluellen is the Executive Director of Social Equity Franchise at Everytable and brings decades of leadership in the fight for food justice and social equity to that work. Welcome, Bryce. We also have Susana Cabrera. Susana has been with Everytable for years as a store lead, store manager, and now on her way as a franchise owner. Welcome, Susana. The goal of this discussion is to unpack Everytable's innovative social equity franchising model and explore the impact of this approach as they take that work to scale. Please add your questions to the chat. We'll spend the last 5 or 10 minutes in Q&A and want this to be as engaged a conversation as possible. Before jumping into that conversation, we'd like to share a quick video that brings Everytable's work to life, documenting the launch of their Everytable location in Compton.
I I discovered healthy eating at a time in my life where I had been sick, and I basically had to change my diet to improve my own health. I really saw the connection between food and health at that point.
Los Angeles is a deeply segregated and unequal society. There's neighborhoods which have basically been left out of the functioning economy, education system, and certainly food system. The only restaurants that do exist are things like McDonald's and Burger King. It's only in the last 50 years that we've got all this obesity crisis, which really comes from a distorted food system. Everytable's mission is to make healthy food affordable and accessible to every community. We sell incredibly high-level, delicious, fresh food for basically less than the price of fast food.
My first quarter at UCLA, I learned that there was something called a social enterprise. It really gave me an idea of how I could help improve someone's life.
It's really important for Everytable to provide our employees the opportunity for true economic ownership.
Working with Everytable is so important to me because I have 3 teenage sons. I'm working to build a business to hand down that's gonna help generations of my family.
Our 6th location is our biggest and best and, in my opinion, most beautiful yet.
Everytable is opening the Compton store. There isn't like a lot of healthy food choices there.
Excited, honestly, is an understatement. We've been waiting for a store just like Everytable to come to the city.
It's not only that it's healthy and it's a balanced meal, but it's actually good.
This is a revolution in food. This is the new fast food, and this is what we deserve.
There is this huge tidal wave of demand for healthy food and nobody to meet it. And we believe that we have cracked it.
The more people get to know us in the community, I can see us expanding to every community. We had someone come in and she says, "I've lost 50 pounds since I've been eating with you guys." It's exciting, and it helps us to really know that we're making a difference. Like, we are really helping people improve their lives.
Welcome, Bryce. Welcome, Susanna.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you both for being here today. Really, really excited for this conversation. So to start, could you introduce yourselves and share a little bit about your background and what has brought you to this work at Everytable? Bryce, you want to start with?
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, I'm Bryce Fluellen. I'm the executive director of our social equity franchise program. What brought me to Everytable was the mission, and I met Sam when he started his nonprofit called Feast or Grocery Ships at the time, and we were aligned in our vision to make healthy food affordable and accessible to all. And so when this position came up, it was a no-brainer for me. It aligned with everything that I've been doing in my career to provide equitable not only food but opportunities for underserved communities. And I just wanted to be on board. I knew Sam was a visionary. He was trying to do something, or we're doing something that hasn't been done. And so I wanted to be a part of that mission and team.
That's great. Susanna, I would love for you to introduce yourself as well and share a little bit about your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. My name is Susana Cabrera. I grew up in South LA. And when I first learned about Everytable's mission and, coming into my neighborhood, a neighborhood where we only have, the fast food joints, McDonald's, Burger King, I was so excited to be, to know more about it because I wasn't sure how they were going to put this together, but I definitely wanted to be part of it. And as a mother of 6, I relate to that challenge of serving healthy meals for my family and balancing my work life. So I definitely was excited for them to be in my neighborhood. And I applied for a store lead position, and I've been with Everytable for 5 years now.
Thanks, Susanna. And, Bryce, one part of your background, you admitted you're a master chef yourself. So what has connected you and your life and your career to food?
Yeah, thanks for that. I don't know if I would be called a master chef, so I appreciate that. I'm pretty good. I grew up, I was deemed like a professional eater at about 8 or 9. I actually had an aunt and uncle who helped raise me. They were like second mother and father, and they had a garden. They introduced me to farmers market. So we used to go to the farmers market and then come back. And I remember the conversations that they had at the table about, hey, the cucumbers this season taste better than last, or the peaches, the sweetness of them, can you just tell the difference? And so those things resonated as a young man. And then fast forward in college, my first job was in a restaurant. And that's where I just fell in love with food, but the restaurant industry. I mean, the energy of the room, the conversation, seeing people dress up. So it was a jazz restaurant, and people dress up and come, and from politicians. It was in DC, and the conversations that I saw them have, and then the smells and the taste and the colors coming and from the kitchen. And so I would always bother the chef and ask him questions and combine that with the music, man. And I just fell in love with the industry and the pace of it. And then becoming a chef years later, I went to culinary school. And the beauty of being a chef for me is that it gives you an opportunity to create, right? Connect. Food is like music. It's like that great connector. Everybody can think of. We do so many things surrounding food. And then to be of service, to make something for somebody and get that immediate gratification. I just love it. And so that's how I look at food, and glad to be at every table in another position, but definitely in the food industry still.
I appreciate that, Bryce. Hearing you talk like that, Susanna, seeing you at the Every Table store, getting hungry already. So, my favorite Every Table icebreaker question: what is your favorite Every Table meal? Susanna, what's your favorite thing on the shelf behind you?
I love the turkey taco. It's very filling. It's delicious. It's really good. I especially like to. I'm a foodie, so I love food. I like to indulge in our warm items. That's my favorite. My favorite meals of everything. Warm.
Bryce, how about you?
Right now, I'm loving. We have a Creole chicken gravy bowl, grain bowl that was a collaboration with one of my favorite restaurants here in Los Angeles, Post and Beam. It's a black-owned restaurant. It's been in South LA going on about 15 years, and so we collabed with that chef this February and created this amazing bowl. The savoriness of the chicken and the gravy combined with the sweet potatoes, the sweetness, and it's at 675. Like this is a 20 $25 meal if you go and sit down. And then the other thing I'm loving is we just launched our juice line in the spring. So we have a beet juice. And I used to hate beets growing up, but once you taste this combined with apples to balance it out, and then ginger to give you that kick, that's one of my favorite drinks that I like to have in the morning.
When we first came across Every Table, went down to LA to visit you guys, and I like that idea of a professional eater, Bryce. I took it on. I really took my due diligence very seriously. I think I had about
Right.
4 Every Table meals for lunch that day, so definitely the most calorific due diligence in Acumen America history. But all worked out. So we're here to talk about the social equity franchise program. But before jumping into that model, I wonder if you could share a little bit about what Every Table is all about. What makes Every Table stand out in the community? How does Every Table work? And Bryce, could you take a crack at this one first?
Yeah, I mean, our mission is to make affordable, nutritious, delicious food affordable and available to everyone everywhere. So no matter your zip code or your pocketbook, we believe that you should have access to food that's going to sustain you and make you healthier. It shouldn't just be a luxury product for those who are middle or high income. And so the way in which we do that is our pricing model, right? We are making fresh food every day at $5 to $9. And so that is our mission, not only here in LA, but our vision is to do it all across the country. And so if you talk to Sam, which I love, his vision is say, hey, we want to have 30,000 every tables all over the country. And I feel like it's only ours to lose in order to do that. There is a huge need. When you go into communities, particularly underserved communities, as Susanna talked about in the video that you showed, there's a saturation of unhealthy product. And there's a reason for that. I know we'll talk about that later, but that's the beauty of it. And so when you go into communities, and Susanna will share, where people don't have access to food like that, you can see the gratitude and appreciation and the understanding, like, yes, you people deserve choices. Yes, everybody can indulge every now and then, but if you're surrounded by fast food, liquor stores, and a limited amount of grocery stores, your choices in your environment, you're going to choose what you have right in front of you. And so we're really proud of our mission and what we're trying to do. And we just looking forward to spreading it not only out through LA, but all throughout the country.
I appreciate that, Bryce. And you talked about, $25 meal for $6.75. And, as you try to bridge some of these barriers to access, how is Everytable ever able to deliver this high quality, delicious food at a price point like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, Sam did a lot of due diligence before launching Everytable, and a part of when he was running his nonprofit and talking to the moms and the people that participated in his nonprofit, they had said, "Hey, we're busy. Everything around us is fast food, and if somebody could create a model where it was quick, but it was healthy and affordable, that's what we would consume." And so, did a lot of research, and what we did is that we said, okay, if we centralize production, and so all of our food is made in a central kitchen, which is right now located in east of LA, or Vernon, east from LA downtown, 30,000 square feet. And so we not only cook the meals, we package them, we have our own delivery service, our delivery trucks, et cetera. So that allows us to be able to keep all of our costs in house and pass on those savings to our consumer. And so in our stores, we have an omni-channel model. And so we're able to package our food coming out of the commissary, and we have stores where consumers can interact and consume and get our meals there. We also have a subscription service that's really taken off, specifically, after COVID and people being home a lot. So you can get your meals delivered to your house. We have vending machines called smart fridges that are in business offices where someone can get our meals in our office. And then we also have a food service where we're doing contracts with folks that are unhoused, food insecure college students. And so we're making sure that wherever consumer wants to get our food, that we're there. But like you said, how we're able to do that is from the savings that we get from producing everything in-house, and then also having our own distribution or our fleet of trucks as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Bryce. And, and Suzanne, I'm excited to hear a little bit more from you around the life inside a store and what you hear from your customers. But just before we go there, Bryce, one more question for you. Given the work that you've done over your career, the leadership you've shown in social equity and in food, how do you see food justice, the intersection of food justice and racial justice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would encourage the audience to read a book, or if you don't have time to read, to go to YouTube, Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And so what he does a pretty good job is really diving deep into the housing policies that were created locally, state, and federal, that segregated particularly Black and brown neighborhoods, and kept folks from creating wealth in those neighborhoods, and creating what, if you want, the term is for us is food desert. But the intersection, if you go in a lot of these neighborhoods, it's food desert, it's economic desert, opportunity desert overall, from the years and years and decades of divestment. And so we see food and the food justice movement as, it ties together with justice and racial justice overall, saying that, hey, we need to create a new environment and make sure that everyone has access to the things they need to do to lead a healthy and prosperous life.
Thank you. So Susanna, take us inside a store. I mean, you've worked in an Everytable store for years. What does a day in the life look like? What have you learned from your customers? Why are they coming to Everytable? What do you hear from them?
We have a lot of guests in our stores. It's a diverse group of people coming in every day, and I have a lot of stories to share, but in respect of your time, I will share my favorite quotes. A lady coming in, she was on her way to work. She was sharing with me, like, I would have loved having this growing up. I would have ate differently, and the choices that I made would have been different. Just having access to this food, I feel so blessed. Another man, we have the Watts Health Center across the street, coming from from his doctor's office, walking into her store. He's just like very excited. My doctor is being suggesting for me to eat healthier, but I just don't know what to eat. So I told him, perfect, you're in the right spot. Let me just give you a couple of suggestions. After trying our food and eating our food, it's tasty, and they're eating lots of greens, whole grains, and it was really delicious. So they enjoyed their experience. They were eager to come back again. It's like, I'm just glad that I could walk from my job or the health center into your store. I didn't know you guys were in our neighborhoods. And a lot of people say, like, I tried to come in, go to shop, and then go out, because we have a Burger King, a Subway, a Chinese food, and there's a lot of fast foods that are not healthy for them. And they're like, I did not know you were here. I just dash in and dash out because I don't want to buy a burger. And then just coming into a store, they're so blessed, that seeing salads and whole grain meals. And they're just very happy to have us. And I'm glad to serve my community.
I really appreciate that. It's, not just about, having a store where you have this available, but you're actually able to connect with your customers around their health. And it's a really a powerful interaction, a powerful work that you're doing. So thank you very much for that. Um, I want to shift gears here a little bit and to the social equity franchise program. So, Bryce, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about this model. What is it, and why did Everytable start the social equity franchise program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as we talked about earlier, our company is rooted in equity and equality. And so looking at the franchise system, similar to the food system, but the franchise system, in this case, traditionally, it's been an industry where you had to have means to be a part of it. So you're talking about having upfront capital from 50,000 on the low end all the way to some franchises say, hey, you got to have $2 million. You have to have $500,000 in net worth. There's all these requirements. And so Sam and the team looked at it and said, hey, our mission is to create food equity, but also economic justice and equity, and like you talked about, the intersection. And so how about if we, created a model where we say, hey, we know that there are a number of people in communities, Black and brown and other, that are extremely talented, but they don't have generational wealth or access to traditional capital, but they have the acumen, the drive, the hunger to be an owner. And so we went to and really studied, and Sam studied philanthropy and said, how can we go to philanthropy and say, hey, let's partner together. You make investments in us and we make investments into these entrepreneurs. And so our model, through those philanthropic investments, we're able to eliminate that upfront cost, right? And then we're vetting people and bringing in people who want this opportunity and training them for up to 8 to 12 months. And then after you come through training successfully, you have the opportunity to become a franchise owner. And so we feel like this is really transformative. It speaks to everything of the DNA of the company, and what we want to do is really create pathways for folks like Susanna and others to not only have economic mobility, but to be able to create generational wealth. And so that's how it was born. And I'm really excited to be a part of the team. Even though I'm the executive director, as you know, it takes a village. So a part of the team that make this vision come to pass.
So Bryce, to go out and start a McDonald's franchise, you've got to have wealth to build wealth from that franchise. Everytable is thinking about it differently. How do we actually provide innovative access to capital? How do we actually provide the right kinds of training to make sure the wealth building possibility is available to everyone? I think it's a really, really powerful idea.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about that training model, Everytable University. Could you share a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Everytable University is the training model, and so once you make it through the interview process, there's 3 stages. The first stage is that you come in and you start from an associate all the way to learning how to be a manager, and then you manage a store. So while you're managing the store, you're getting that hands-on experience and really understanding and becoming proficient in the Everytable business model. And then there's also leadership classes that are folded in. And so actually, ironically, Susanna and the rest of the first cohort are starting communication class this evening. And so that communication class is led by an external facilitator, and you learn everything about public speaking, how to prepare a speech, how to deliver a speech, but how do you also talk to and motivate your employees, and how do you step outside the 4 walls and be able to speak to the community. And then we also have financial management and planning, civic leadership, and then entrepreneurial mindset. Like, what is the mindset? Entrepreneurialism has been sold as sexy. In some ways it is, but as you talk to any entrepreneur, they will tell you how difficult it is, how stressful it can be. So what are those key tools and resources and people that you need to use and things you need to know in order to make it through the ups and downs that come from owning and running your own business? And then the latter part, it's really all in, like I said, they have leadership classes with me bi-weekly. So we have one-on-ones. Susanna and I and the rest of the cohort talk about what are your goals professionally, but also personally. So getting that one-on-one hands coaching throughout the training process. And then the final stage is that we are preparing you to become an owner. So we're looking at everything you've done throughout that 6 to 7 months, looking at where your strengths are, where your opportunity, and then you go in front of our franchise committee and myself and Sam, and then you make the decision on whether or not you're ready to own a franchise. And so it's pretty robust, comprehensive. And then once you become an owner, we still provide hands-on training through our operations team and myself. And so we want to make sure, like we said, that we're providing the resources for folks to be successful, because their success is our success. And so everything that we can do to make sure that you are prepared is what our job is, to be of service in that way.
Thanks, Bryce. So, Susanna, how did you first hear about the program, and what attracted you to the social equity franchise program?
To be honest with you, I was very insecure about, this, just filling the application. I was really nervous, but, just seeing the opportunity presented to me, I would not been able to do something like this. I don't have the capital to do so. I was like, okay, we really need to do it. We need to push ourselves, get off my comfort zone. I've been with Everytable already for quite a while, so I was ready. I felt definitely ready. And the support that this program was bringing to me, all the program that Bryce just mentioned, all the support, where do you find these tools? Like, there's no other program that offers it. And, I was very wowed by the whole thing, how the team has put it together. And I was just like, I need to be part of this. I really need to do it.
Thanks, Susanna. And you've been running a store. What does the shift from running a store to owning a store mean to you?
Running the shift is very fun. Like I said, I love interacting with customers, but just having that business perspective, like talking to Bryce, it is pretty basic for us, just learning how to set goals and being able to achieve them, and just having that strategy mindset and learning how to plan it out, because you come to the store, you run the shift, and then you do your store manager duties, but the success and looking at the EBITDA, all that little things that Bryce is teaching us in our one-on-ones, he's giving me access and the look and the perspective to how to change my mindset.
I appreciate that, Susanna. Yeah, no, that's great. And, Bryce, I think Susanna's already acing the communication section, so you might have to, adapt, put the masterclass up for her, because I really appreciate that. So, Bryce, you talked about, how this program is designed from the ground up to be more accessible. How do you pull that off? Are there credit score, limits or out-of-pocket expenses? I mean, how do you think about overcoming some of these, barriers that somebody would face if they were, pursuing a more traditional model?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the front end in the interview process, we have a pretty robust 6-stage interview process, and then we also have partners, recruitment partners that I'm in communication with, and the other team members are in communication with pretty frequently, talking about the candidates that we're looking for. We had to tailor that some in the beginning, so they had a full understanding of what it takes to be successful at Everytable. And then they are able to go out and they vet. So one of our partners, they vet and require an interview to get through them before they even let somebody apply. So it's really about doing that and then the interview process is really extensive. And then if you look at there is no credit check. I mean, we will help candidates, with credit restoration, because we feel like that's going to set them up successfully, period, in life, personal and professionally. But it's not something that would hinder a person from being able to get a franchise. But then also, if you look at the 8 to 12 months process of training, we look at that as a holistic underwriting process, because we're going to be spending, if you think about an external candidate, we're spending almost 8 months or to a year with someone. They're actually managing a store. So we're going to know pretty quickly, and I'm having one-on-ones with them. We're going to know pretty quickly where are the areas of opportunity, where are some things that we can fill in, the gaps that we can fill in to make sure they're successful. So we look at it from that perspective. So by the time you get to the end of it, you should be getting a store, right? You're successfully running a store. You've done all the things. You've learned about what you're going to need to do as an owner. And spending that time with us will set you up for success. And so that's how we look at it. From a holistic standpoint, and taking all these different elements, not only from the vetting process, but also the interviewing process, and then in the training process, to create something that is equitable for those folks who don't have that traditional upfront capital.
Thanks, Bryce. And, it still does cost money to, launch an Everytable franchise. How does Everytable think about financing that? And could you talk a little bit about some of the innovation that you all have designed in terms of bringing that capital to the table?
Yeah, that's a great question because I always get it. I do information sessions, and you know the old adage, like, it sounds too good to be true. Something must be. Like, come on, tell me something that's wrong. I was like, no, there is risk, but there's risk in everything, right? There's risk of your time. So what we figured out, and Sam figured out, I can't take credit for it, but in the beginning is really looking at what's called PRIs, which were program-related investments that foundations have at their disposal, which is a tax code that they had since the 70s that says foundations can actually invest in companies. They don't have to be nonprofits if that company is mission driven and has a social enterprise or a social mission. And it's another way for foundations to get their capital out there in comparison to grants because grants are a complete write-off. Their return can be anywhere from a 0% return all the way to 2%, but it's concessionary. And so traditionally, they've done a lot of PRIs in affordable housing. But Sam was able to knock on some doors. One of the first ones was the Kellogg Foundation, who not only invested in Everytable as a company, but also the social equity franchise vision. Year to date, we've been able to raise almost $6 million in a combination of those PRIs from Annenberg Foundation, Dignity Health, Cal Wellness, and then grants from Kroger Foundation. We got a PRI also from Lieber Foundation, and just recently a grant from the Irvine Foundation. And so it's a combination of that financing where we do the build out costs. So our average build out cost here in LA, build out means construction of a store, is anywhere from 250,000 to 305,000. And we eliminate those upfront costs that, like we talked about, are typically or capital that entrepreneurs need to have to get into a franchise game. And then the model says, hey, once you get in your store, we start to run it. Once it becomes profitable, then you would pay that money back to us over 5 years at market rate interest. And then once you pay it off, you own that store outright. And so our model estimates that a person owner should be at about six figures at maybe year 3 or year 4 and be able to bring that money to the bottom line for themselves. And so, and then we're also looking at other ways to finance. So we're talking to some CDFIs to develop a larger fund for the social equity franchise program. And so like I said, it's a team effort. I mean, the foundation world coming together with us, the business world, and saying, hey, we both believe in the same thing. Let's see how we can make it happen. And the last thing I'll say is that if you look at last year, where we were last year, we understand that people in the world was calling for things to be done differently. And I always encourage people to not forget about that. Like, consider that maybe the honeymoon period. And you know how that is sometimes as things go on, people forget, they get back to being comfortable. But we say, hey, no, we can't afford to go back to be comfortable. We don't want things to be like they used to be. We want to create these different models, and we need everybody at the table, no pun intended, to do it.
No, that's great, Bryce. I mean, what really is so powerful about that is that, the work that you're doing is both systemic and sustainable. That you're building this new model of franchise and this new model of wealth creation, and you're doing it in a way that's not reliant on handouts that can sort of fade away when that honeymoon period is over. It's when those loans are repaid from franchisees, they go back out to other franchisees and really power scale. And I think that systemic and sustainable approach that Everytable has designed here, really is forging a new model. You talked a little bit. I mean, I think did you say six figures, Bryce?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's real wealth.
That's the hope. That's the hope. Yeah.
We're here to talk about the wealth gap. I mean, I would love to hear from you, like how does this build wealth? And then Susanna, would love to hear from you as well, what that wealth would mean to you as you progress along this path towards franchise ownership. But Bryce, first of all, talk a little bit about more about that, because you kind of breeze through that, but that's really game-changing money.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we see business ownership and entrepreneurship, in this case, franchising, is a model for economic mobility, like getting people to be able to grow economically and then create that wealth. And so, if you look at our model, a couple of things that's attractive about it, from a labor intensity standpoint, I always tell potential owners, and Susanna and I had this conversation, is that you're not preparing any of the food. The food comes prepared. You're really not, and not to diminish it, but you are actually just interacting with customers, finding out what customers love. And so it frees you up in that regard. And so from a labor intensity standpoint, because the food industry can be extremely labor intensive, I think that we have a very valuable proposition. From an economic perspective, like you said, if we estimate that you can get to lower six figures in year three, that's an estimate. Things could go a different direction. And so you're talking about somebody who could jump, their income could jump maybe 50, 60, 75% in 3 to 5 years, right? That's pretty attractive. The last thing I'll say is that what I see, and Susanna and I talked about this, I see somebody with her, like her, who's been with Everytable going on 4 or 5 years, is owning a couple. So you compound that. Let's say if you're six figures and you have one location, if you have two, then you see the numbers add up, and you two or three, right? And you're able to not only get that economic mobility, but create that wealth where you'd be able to start saving. People have aspirations. You know, a lot of folks have aspiration, and I know it's very difficult in cities like LA and New York and San Francisco, but how do you get someone where they have a pathway to being able to own a house? Or if they want to use some of that income to put and start saving for their children and to go to college. And so that's what our goal is, and my vision is for folks like Susanna and other people who are in the program. It's like, I want to get you where you're saying, hey, now I'm able to save, now I'm able to build, and I'm going to pass on the building and saving to others, not only in my family, but my community.
And thank you, Bryce. And Susanna, what is that? What is that? I guess two questions for you. What is that wealth? What would that wealth mean? But that wealth doesn't come without, in this process, doesn't come without risk. And how do you think about that risk? And how does your family, your community think about that risk as you go down this path?
Well, let me just talk to you a little bit about my background. My mother was a single mom growing up, and she always struggled financially. Just, and for me to be able to change my generations to come, that would be amazing. If I successfully take over my own store and pay back my debt, and the start cost of the store, and actually build wealth from on Everytable, I'd be so blessed. My generations will have a different future, and not only my family, but my community, seeing somebody that that started from store lead into store ownership, and then building that wealth, and seeing other people in my community just see that I was able to make it. And then I want to make sure I work with people from my community so that they could see that they can make it too. That my plan is to own my Everytable and then inspire others, bring others on board, and then try to hire from within my community, try to start initiatives in my community from my perspective, like something that I could start to let people know, and you guys can make it too. Let's work towards it. That's what that means. Now, the risk, taking that into consideration, nothing could take away the knowledge. Everything that I've learned, everything that's going to go into my, into myself, like nothing could take away what you know. And that's what I'm like, I'm going to win either way. I just know.
I believe it. 100%. Susanna, as you, what kind of advice would you give to somebody else who's, maybe thinking about, got that application for the Everytable social equity franchise program up and thinking about it themselves? What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's, thinking about it for the first time?
Yeah, to take that risk. There's, like I told you, no one can take knowledge away from you. And once you've learned and go through this program, you're gonna be a different person once you finish the program. If you get your trophy, you get your store, you're successful, amazing. If you just take the knowledge and you wouldn't start from zero. You'll be starting from a different level. So the risk is really not much, because your time is investing in yourself and growing. So I don't find it to be a high risk. You're investing in yourself. Take the chance.
I love that. No one can take the knowledge away from you, and bet on yourself, and back yourself, and there's something really powerful on the other side. Thank you, Susanna. So we'll shift over to Q&A from the audience here in just a couple minutes. A couple more questions for me. One, y'all have started this work in LA. How do you think about, this work going to scale? What does it really take, to see this program become something national, or really to grow this across an even bigger scale?
Yeah, it takes investments, long-term investment, which we have now, but continued investment from our philanthropic partners, but also the financial people that have financial investors who have the resources. I see this as, and we think about investments, I think long term. And so the vision is that the majority of our stores could be possibly social equity franchise stores. So if you think about Susanna's vision and her story, so you multiply that by thousands and thousands, and so now you have Black and brown owners who are not only creating healthy food or providing healthy food in communities that traditionally didn't have them, but also building economically and professionally, and also what she said, hey, how that inspires others. And so I just encourage, what it takes is that this continued investment, continued work. It's not easy. Nothing is easy that's worth having. Like you said, we're doing something that, if you look around, really hasn't been done. And that excites me. But I would just encourage other folks to, whatever space they're in, if they're in the food or whatever, financial or whatever spaces they're in, to really be bold and think about making these investments so we don't go back to what we saw last year, right? And that's the whole goal. Like, how do we make a more equitable society? Martin Luther King said life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others? And so I always lead with that myself and always challenge myself to think that way.
Thanks, Bryce. Well, we've just got a couple minutes left here, so we'll switch to Q&A from the audience. So one question here: what other stakeholders do you see as critical to the success of Everytable? What role might government, investors, and others play in trying to make this work, the food justice and wealth gap closing, really take hold?
Yeah, I see it. Everybody plays a part. I think one thing that needs to shift from government to people, some people in the financial sector and philanthropy, is really shifting the mindset to long term, right? Oftentimes, all of us like success or like to see success and hit milestones. But when you're thinking about communities, particularly underserved communities that have been divested for decades, taking an investment and saying, oh, I need to see a return, whether that's financial or social, in 2 to 5 years, is not the mindset that I feel people need to have in this perspective, right? They need to understand, people should understand that, yes, you may get some success in 2 to 5 years, but we're really looking at, I always say, the change that I want to see in the world and an environment that I want to see, I probably won't be here when that happens. It'll be something that will be passed on to my kids, and the residual of that will happen with my kids. And so that is something that I would say that needs to take place, and people need to think and shift their mindset from that perspective. I know that there are a lot of folks that do think that way, but I think we just need a lot more at the table. So whether it's government, financial, business, all of those people coming together and say, okay, we want to see some changes that were decades in the making, right? And we want to see it shift. So we're making these long-term investments, just like people do when they make investments in Wall Street. They're looking like 10, 20 years out on making an investment in something that's going to change the landscape of what we see today.
Thanks, Bryce. And we're just moving to wrap here. I want to thank you, Bryce. I want to thank you, Susanna, for joining us. For being here. But I also really want to thank you just for your leadership and the amazing things that both of you are doing in this world. I really do sit here in conversation with you holding such admiration and gratitude for you both. So thank you. I also want to thank Barclays for hosting this panel. We're grateful for your partnership and appreciate everybody tuning in. I encourage folks, I'd love to sort of close with a call to action, and maybe we can just quickly go around. I'll go first, and Susanna and Bryce would love to see if there's things you would invite action you would invite folks to take coming out of this conversation today. For me, I would love the audience to go check out wheretonext.org. Acumen has launched an insights platform. We're bringing folks together, voices like those of Susanna and Bryce, to talk about issues that are critical to our country, racial equity and health, the closing the wealth gap, and others. So check it out, join the conversation, wheretonext.org. Bryce or Susanna, I wonder if there's any call to action that you would offer up to the audience before we close.
I'll let Susanna go first, and then
Most definitely, yes. To just investors to be bold and invest in their community. There's people hungry like myself that want this change. We just need the opportunity to present to us, to be able to, you know, change our generations and our communities to better our communities. Thank you for having me.
yeah. To piggyback off of that, I would just encourage people to be visionary, like seeing and creating things that do not exist, and be courageous. Courageous. Don't wait for other folks to do things. If you know something that is not right and needs to be done and change, have the courage to go out there and do it, because you will be the folks that people are following behind once they see, oh yeah, it does work. We can do that. So I want people to be courageous and visionaries.
Well, thank you again, Bryce. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you to everyone at the Atlantic Festival for pulling this conversation together. These are really the types of conversations that we need to be having. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.